Okay, we're back in session. We're going to go back and pick up item 3.3, which was the library annual report to the Chancellor, Title V proposed date change. Let me get us going here. Okay. Item 3.3 is a first reading and public hearing for proposed regulations related to the annual report on the condition of district libraries. The Chancellor and staff will now provide information on the item. Take it away.
Thank you, President Estolano, Vice President Epstein, the members of the board, Chancellor Oakley. Dean LeBaron Woodyard and I have saved probably the most complex and most controversial item for last. This item proposes that the Board of Governors approves a change in the date from the annual library data survey from August to October of each year.
Okay.
Essentially, what this window of opportunity provides is for colleges to have a little bit more time once the school year's gotten underway to collect data, collaborate on the report, and provide a fuller response. Having an August deadline, a lot of colleges are just coming back at that time, and it does present a hardship on many of the librarians who are very busy at the beginning of the year doing orientations and a lot of the other work to get the semester underway. And so we think that this is a more manageable date. And so Dean Woodyard and I would submit this for your approval for a first reading.
Okay, let me open up the public hearing. The public hearing on item 3.3, the proposed amendments to California Code of Regulations, Title V, Section 55800, is now open. The purpose of the hearing is for the Board of Governors to receive comments and testimony from members of the public regarding the proposed regulations. At this time, the floor is open for comments from the public. Mr. Vice President. I am surprised.
Me too.
And shocked. Okay, hearing none, this public hearing is closed. This concludes the public hearing on this matter. Before I open it up to any questions or comments from members of the Board of Governors, I'll just say this. Whatever the librarians want, I will support. I truly believe it.
Wow.
As somebody who, you know, the secret to being an excellent lawyer is having an excellent relationship with your firm or company's law librarian. I think librarians are angels amongst us. And so if they need 3 more months, by golly, we should give it to them. All right, with that, any questions or comments by members of the Board of Governors? No? Okay, we'll see you back here the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so on to item 4.2, update on the 2018-19 budget. And Mr. Osmeña will be taking this one. A great budget. Okay, Vice Chancellor, you ready to roll?
Christian Osmeña, Vice Chancellor for Finance and Facilities Planning, and I think this item represents the end of my onboarding to this office, hopefully. So we'll go over the 2018-19 state budget, talk about changes for the California community colleges, and then provide a quick update on the implementation of the funding formula. And so I've used this slide before. We've now reached the end of the budget process. Since you last met, the conference committee took its actions. The legislature, both houses of the legislature both took actions on the budget, and the governor signed the budget on June 27th in advance of the July 1st start of the fiscal year. This particular display doesn't well capture the fact that this is a cycle, that the budget process is a cycle. So later in this meeting, Vice Chancellor Mattoon and I will discuss the Board of Governors 2019-20 budget request, and this process will start anew. So no time wasted. So I've included this slide here just to provide an overview of the state budget as a whole. This chart here shows total expenditures. I think a lot's been written. It's relatively notable that in the 2018-19 fiscal year, we're anticipating nearly $200 billion in expenditures as a whole for the state budget. That includes both the state's general fund, the discretionary resources, as well as a variety of state special funds. One way to think about kind of what happened in this budget process is to talk through discretionary resources, those decisions that the legislature and the governor had after we funded the continuation of existing programs and existing policies. The Legislative Analyst's Office estimated that about $10 billion of expenditures in this budget were discretionary in nature, and of that, nearly all of those expenditures, about, I would say 4/5 of those expenditures were either to grow reserves and to spend on one-time activities. There was some relatively small, compared to the discretionary pot, money of spending on ongoing activities. So notably, the budget fully funds the budget stabilization account, which was the new account created in Proposition 2. That grows the balance to about $14 billion. And then the remaining kind of big substantive part of this budget was on one-time spending. That included about $700 million in one-time spending for UC and CSU, $630 million to replace the state capital annex, $500 million for emergency homeless aid block grants, and nearly $300 million to repay local government mandates. And then the remaining portion of that discretionary pot was for ongoing spending, which totals about $1.5 billion in the out years. This includes growth in CalWORKs cash aid, but also additional funding for the universities and additional money to increase salaries for correctional officers. So I'll move on to an overview of the changes for the California community colleges. In your written item, there's a full listing of all the policy adjustments made for the community colleges. Happy to talk through any of those items. The way I've tried to display the expenditures here is by talking about your board request, which you approved in September, and how the budget aligns or doesn't align with that request. The biggest item that you all requested was an increase in general operating expenses through the general apportionment for the community colleges. You had requested $200 million ongoing. The budget included an additional $270 million for general apportionments with the trailer bill that begins the implementation of the student-centered funding formula. Happy to talk through, and I'll have some slides at the end that talk through some of the policy changes that are included with the funding formula. The other large request was funding for online education, what we were calling at the time Project Flow. And so it was a combination of additional funding for online education and related changes in statute. As you heard earlier, the budget includes $100 million one-time, $20 million ongoing for the online college, and $35 million one-time for the online education initiative. You took action in your digital innovation budget on those issues. Next on your priorities were a set of investments related to faculty. The first was a request for $75 million to increase the number of full-time faculty, and then $25 million to provide additional support for part-time faculty. The budget includes $50 million ongoing for full-time faculty to increase the number, as well as $50 million one-time for part-time faculty office hours. Our office, thinks that as part of these investments, we're thinking a lot about how do you use this spending to increase diversity in the faculty. And we're talking now with the faculty groups, and we'll be talking with the governor and the legislature about how we're going to allocate those resources. Your request had also requested changes to the Cal Grant program, both additional funding and related changes to statutes. I think it's always helpful to note that of the nearly $2 billion in funding for the Cal Grant program, nearly half of that goes to UC students. Next biggest chunk goes to CSU students, with relatively small amounts of funding in the Cal Grant program going to community college students for two reasons. One, the grants that community college students are eligible for are smaller than the grants that go to UC and CSU students. For UC and CSU students, the Cal Grant pays for tuition. For community college students, the Cal Grant only provides about $1,600 to pay for an access award for living costs. And then because of the students we serve, many of our students are not eligible for the entitlement Cal Grant program. So most of our students have to compete for a relatively small, about 35,000 grants statewide for the competitive program. So the budget action made steps in the right direction. It provided an additional $41 million for a new program, a reconstitute program for full-time students. We combined the existing full-time student success program and the community college completion grant program into a new student success completion grant program that largely provides additional resources for students who take 12, 13, 14, 15 units and above. The amount that a student receives grows by the number of, based on the number of units they take. So some additional resources for financial aid for community college students. But in order to get this grant, you have to be eligible for a Cal Grant B Access Award. And so that's a relatively small number of our students today. I think financially it's going to be something we continue to bring to this board and talk with you about in the future. So then a number of additional changes to the community college budget. I'll start with the middle, which I think is one of the more notable changes. You would ask that we begin to integrate student support services. We often think of those as funded by categorical programs. Three of the most prominent have been the Student Success and Support Program, the Student Equity Program, and the Basic Skills for Student Success Program. The budget takes a step in that direction. It consolidates those programs into a new Student Equity and Achievement Program. It funds it at the current levels of what those three programs were currently receiving, but provides colleges with additional flexibility to figure out how best to meet the needs of their students with an eye towards the equity plans they've created. At the top there, you would ask for changes related to adult education data to better coordinate largely data sharing between school districts who administer adult schools and our community colleges. The budget provides $5 million ongoing to support new systems, and then makes a variety of related changes to statutes to better encourage us to identify students and encourage adult schools to identify students so that we can figure out what those student journeys look like. You had requested an additional $2.5 million ongoing for Chancellor's office staffing to build additional capacity related to the leadership efforts that we're trying to engage in here. The budget includes an additional $2 million that was proposed by the governor, and we're going through a process right now to begin to identify how do you allocate those resources strategically. Your request had also included additional resources related to professional development into basic skills transformation. There was no related budget action, but as you well know, and as you heard in the Student Success Spotlight, that this is, remains a priority for this office and the work that we're doing related to guided pathways, AB 705, and other efforts. So this slide talks through the online college. We had a lengthy presentation, so I won't spend too much time, but again, just noting that there's both funding and then statute in the budget that is aimed at, one, providing for clearer governance, and you've talked through the governance, but also I would highlight a legislative interest in making sure that the online college links to the efforts that are going on at the other colleges, and making sure that we can focus moving forward on how students who attend and complete programs at the online college have opportunities to continue their education at the other colleges. So in the student-centered funding formula, we've talked through the proposal several times. So the budget largely reflects what the governor had proposed in his May revision. So we're talking about a three-part formula that includes a base allocation that's generally linked to current factors, primarily credit full-time student enrollment, but also a supplemental allocation that allocates fundings based on the counts of low-income students, and a student success allocation that counts outcomes that are related to the vision for success, largely related to progression and completion, and that includes premiums for the outcomes of those low-income students. As we have talked about previously, non-credit enrollment and some other enrollment, particularly students who are incarcerated in correctional facilities and students who are enrolled, high school students who are enrolled in dual enrollment programs through our colleges would be funded at the current rates. And then I think important to this conversation is the rates are calculated to provide a 3-year transition. So I'm going to talk through the new allocations, the supplemental allocation and the student success allocation. I'm going to talk in points, which can be a little confusing, but I'll convert the points to dollars in a slide that's coming up. So for the supplemental allocation, what a district would, we're going to count the number of Pell Grant recipients, California College Promise Grant recipients, AB 540 students, and give each of those students 1 point. So as you may know, so the Pell Grant is a federal student aid program. The California College Promise Grant is our fee waiver. We formerly called it the Board of Governors fee waiver program. And AB 540 students is a category of students who are technically considered non-resident students, but who have attended school or college in California generally for at least 3 years before this enrollment. So in most cases, these are undocumented immigrant students.
Excuse me, Christian, can you remind us, I know it's difficult, but what's the income threshold for California College Promise Grant?
So I think the last time, so I think most students who receive a Pell Grant have incomes of less than, and I want to say it's, and I'm turning to Vice Chancellor Mattoon, but I want to say it's about less than $60,000. So
Okay.
I think most students who are in that bucket, it depends on the number of students in your family and the number of students attending college.
And the College Promise Grant recipients, that's also income
Well, it's
limited,
inclusive of Pell Grant recipients,
Okay.
but then it also includes students who receive other types of public assistance.
Okay.
And you can qualify. So the Promise Grant recipients are a larger body than the Pell Grant
So
recipients.
it's Pell Grant, or if you receive other kinds of public assistance. Got
Yes.
it. Thank you.
So this slide just shows the different ways in which colleges, districts would generate points under the student success allocation. So I would highlight 2 things here. So on the rows, the 8 rows that follow, are a variety of progression and completion metrics that are consistent with the types of progression and completion metrics that matter for initiatives like Guided Pathways, for AB 705, and for our Vision for Success goals. So the top 4 are related to certificates and degrees, with a weighting there to emphasize the importance to our system of associate degrees for transfer. I think you heard about that earlier today in the work that we're doing with the independent institutions. It obviously matters for the work that our system's doing with the UC and CSU. That's clearly related to the Vision for Success. Moving down to the bottom 4, we're talking about completion of transfer level math and English, which is consistent with the work that we're doing in both Guided Pathways and AB 705. Successful transfer to a 4-year university, which is consistent with our Vision for Success goals. And then measures that are aimed to get to the broader missions of our college: completion of 9 or more career technical education units and attainment of a regional living wage. And so for each of those, if you look at the second column, a district would receive points for all students who attain that metric. So we would count all of those counts and provide additional resources based on those counts. But in addition, we would also provide resources based on counts of the number of Promise Grant recipients who attain those outcomes and the number of Pell Grant recipients who attain those outcomes. Of course.
So you're in a sense, you get double points for somebody who's a Pell Grant recipient.
Yes.
Because they get picked up in the Promise Grant and they get picked up again in the Pell Grant. So
Yeah.
it really weights towards lower income students.
Yes, and that's, I think one of the things that we talked about, a lot of the states we talked to, a lot of the researchers we talked to, I think one of the concerns about formulas like this is that, they have the potential to encourage cream skimming behavior,
Yeah.
that institutions tailor their services to those students who are most likely to succeed. And so I think, and those factors are often correlated with student need. And so I think a formula like this is hoping to create some alternative incentives there.
Thank you.
And so this is the,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Of course.
Go ahead, Board Member Rollins.
Thank you. Taking a look at the points, so I get where there's a different level of need. How are we allocating the points if, say, maybe they're completing a credit certificate at the same time that they're completing an associate's degree? Are we duplicating, or are they all unduplicated?
Yes, so that we would count them twice. So if a student in a given year earns both a credit certificate and an associate degree, they would receive both of those points. I think that's something that, our recommendation had been to count the student once. I think there are, arguments on both sides. I think the argument is that if we believe each award has meaning, then we should be fine counting them multiple times. I think the concern is, what kind of behavior does that encourage among, how institutions are creating awards and just kind of different behaviors around, simply awarding a student a degree. So I think that's something that many people are interested in us monitoring. We are interested in monitoring it moving forward.
But this funding formula, these points are they specified in the legislation?
They're specified in the legislation.
This detail, so if we want to change it, we have to amend the legislation.
Yeah.
Got it.
That was a point of concern of ours as we went into negotiations. We wanted to give the Board of Governors as much authority as possible, but in the end, the final compromise took that authority out.
Key point. Usually we don't interrupt you, I'm sorry, but it's
free.
pretty deep. Board Member Fon.
I do have a question on this particular.
Yeah, please go ahead. Okay. Yeah.
So I think it needs to be clear and communicated to the colleges about the counting of that one student who in a given year achieves the stackable credentials, the 8-unit certificate that I mentioned this morning, and plus the following year take an additional few courses to achieve the 16-unit courses. It needs to be clear communicated to the colleges that is that count as 2 or 1, number 1. Number 2, I think all of the points in here can be actually controlled by the college by the mere number, meaning that when a certificate is granted, the college knows. What is unclear, though, is the successful transfer to a 4-year institution, including private universities, I assume. And how does that get counted? Who is keeping record of that? If a student wishes not to report to their college that they're going to Pepperdine or University of San Diego, or for that matter, any college, how is that counted and tracked is my question.
Yes. And just to clarify on the credit certificates, we're looking at the statute specifies that these are Chancellor-approved credit certificates 16 units or above. So this line here is only certificates 16 units or above. To the broader point, aside from those two, we are pulling from data that the colleges are submitting and districts are submitting to the Chancellor's office. And so districts should be able to manage their data on these. On successful transfer and attainment of regional living wage, our office is going to have to help districts understand that data. And we are going to have to produce that data for districts to use to make projections. I think that is part of our implementation plan, and we're working to figure out how best can we provide that data to the colleges.
In addition, most of our transferring institutions, certainly UC, CSU, all of the AICCU or colleges and universities participate with the National Clearinghouse. So that is, the student doesn't have to report. There's a tracking of that student into the National Clearinghouse, which we receive reports from. So we're able to track most students. There are some private for-profits that don't participate in the National Clearinghouse that we will need to work on. But by and large, the bulk of students are in the clearinghouse.
And so those are the data. So the successful transfer is a match that our office does with our data to the clearinghouse. The attainment of the regional wage is a match that our office does with the Employment Development Department's unemployment insurance system.
I want to point out the row next to the last completion of 9 units, CT units. Because I teach business, for instance, and business and marketing are within the CTE. And if we have a 9-unit certificate, in marketing or in business. And then we also have an 18-unit certificate, which I think aligns with row 4. My question is, are those two credentials, certificates, count in this case as 3 points for that one student in a given year?
If the student completes it in a given year, that student would be tracked in both of those areas.
If I can just take a quick step back, because I think there's a lot of questions about the actual points in the formula. Let me first reiterate that the point of the funding formula metrics are supposed to support and align with the implementation of the strategic, of the vision for success. So the vision for success are the goals we want to achieve. The guided pathways framework is a tool to get us to that. And so the underlying and the foundational attempt here was to align funding with those aspects. What tends to happen as soon as the system comes out, which there's no system that's perfect, and certainly this one's not perfect either, is people begin to start quickly focusing on how do I maximize revenue. And so this is a point of tension that we're going to have to continue to work on. I think one of the issues that we addressed is this issue of regional living wage. We cannot just have colleges creating certificate and degree programs that don't lead to any meaningful outcome. So if it's in a career field, it's got to lead to a regional living wage, or that program of study needs to lead to transfer. So these are the areas where I think there's agreement on both our end and our colleagues in the faculty and administration that we need to put a clear focus on and make sure that we are not having an unintended consequence. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, there were some things that were pulled out of our desired proposal, including issues around first generation and other issues, but I'm hopeful that through the mechanisms that the legislature is going to be putting in place, we will have an opportunity to come back to these and quickly identify areas that we should be considering for improvement.
Okay. I'll ask another question. Regional living wage, as defined by whom? California Budget Project, or what's the source?
That I will need to follow up unless there's someone. Let me follow up with you on.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the.
Vice Chancellor John Quinlivan would know this off the top of
off the top of her head.
Yes.
I'm betting it's California Budget Project, but I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Of course. And maybe to connect this conversation to, to maybe take a step back and connect this conversation to the governor's question about, in all of these reforms, are we, is this top-down, centralized management? Is this bottom-up? And I think, part of the logic around the funding formula, part of the logic we heard from other states and from researchers is that funding formulas can be part of a state's attempt to try to find a balance between both, to set goals for the system, to create clear incentives around the goals, but then not to have to engage in the day-to-day management of institutions around how to meet those goals, to leave some of that flexibility up to institutions to figure out how do you maximize resources under the formula, meeting those goals that are important to states. So this slide here attempts to take those points and to convert it to something a little bit more meaningful. And so again, we've got these 3 allocations. The largest part of the base allocation is this per enrollment funding. And so you'll see there's a rate per full-time equivalent student enrolled in credit courses. In that second subline, there's also a basic allocation based on the number of colleges and comprehensive centers in a district consistent with the existing formula. It's a little more complicated than one number, but there's this other part of that base allocation. Then moving forward for the supplemental allocation, there's a dollar value for each point generated in the supplemental allocation, and then a different dollar value generated for each point in the student success allocation. So these rates here, the dollar values, were calculated with an expectation that in 1819, about 70% of the money would go towards that base allocation, with 20% of the money going to the supplemental allocation, and then 10% going to the student success allocation. In 1920, the base allocation ramps down by 5%, and the student success allocation ramps up by 5%. And then by 2021, the goal was to have a 60-20-20 split across those three allocations. I think what's important to note here is that the statute specifies the dollar values. It doesn't specify those shares. So I think moving forward, it's probably helpful to think about kind of these rates versus controlling based on those percentages. So you can see on that second line there that 3,727 decreases to 3,046 in 2021. And then for the student success allocation, the point value of 111 points grows to 222. Those amounts don't include the cost of living adjustments that would be applied in each of those years. So the values would still grow by cost of living. And so, I think one of the takeaways of the...
I'm sorry, Christian, one more.
I'm sorry.
I just have a question about that. If it's supposed to be 60-20-20 by 2021, as I add it, I mean, why are these numbers? What I don't know.
It's per point.
It's per point, but there are a lot more points available in the student success allocation than there are in the supplemental. Is that?
Yes, the total amount of points is greater. Yes.
Because the supplemental is just based on low-income status.
Correct.
Versus the success, which takes that low-income status and matches it against achievement.
As well as achievement of all students.
Yeah, please.
So I guess these are calculated.
This is a big data collection project and verification. Is it? I mean, you're not the IT expert, but it seems to me like this is really complicated. There's a lot of ways to manipulate it. Are we pretty? Do systems exist today to collect this information without making a whole lot?
So the actual data, I think in going through this exercise, the intent was to rely on data we collect today as a system. I think the work that this office and others are going to have to do moving forward is to make sure that data that previously wasn't used for some of these purposes is now, that we are monitoring the data, that we are coming up with, having conversations about how that data is going to be audited in the future. So I think there's a conversation around, we took data that had been used largely for reporting, largely just, for a variety of other purposes, and we're applying it in this new context. And I think there's certainly work that's going to have to go on to make sure that makes sense.
Let me add to that answer, and Christian hinted at it. But just as we do today, we have an audit manual that all the independent auditors use to audit how we report enrollment. Every college gets audited on how they collect and report enrollment. That function will continue to exist as we update the auditing manual. Auditors will now be looking at the way that they're collecting enrollment data in this new funding formula. So there is a mechanism in place to ensure that the data that colleges are collecting and reporting is accurate, and there will be a penalty if an auditor finds that it is not.
Board Member Anderson.
Christian, who will actually own this responsibility? Will this be the new person that's hired? And then will it be regular reports that come back to us on these actual numbers?
The responsibility is going to be shared. I probably will be your kind of, ringleader in trying to coordinate a variety of tasks around here. But for the data, that's certainly, I think, going to fall in the new Vice Chancellor's area. So I think that person is going to be responsible for figuring out kind of the questions that we have related to MIS, or the Management Information System data.
Okay, we'll let you finally get to your last slides.
So I think, one of the takeaways of this legislative process has been, the strong interest in moving to a new system that achieves goals that I think many of us think are important, while providing stability to districts. And so the budget includes a number of different provisions to try to maintain stability for districts. I've noted two here. That first is what we've commonly called a hold harmless provision. And so in 2018-19, 2019-20, and 2021, we'll look at a district's 2017-18 funding. We'll grow it by the changes in the cost of living. We'll compare that to what the formula comes up with, and we'll take the higher of the two amounts and fund the district at that higher of the two amounts. There's also a stability provision, that second bullet, that says in any year moving forward, we would delay any decreases in revenues by 1 year. So districts have an additional year to plan for decreases in revenue. I think the other part of this, that third set of bullets, is our intent to begin to align budgets, or to further align budgets with districts' academic programs, instructional programs moving forward. So there's a few different components of that. One is that by next year, districts are required to adopt goals that are aligned with the vision for success, so local goals that reflect the vision for success. The second is that they begin to align their comprehensive plans, what I think we're also considering kind of educational master plans, with those goals, and then aligning their annual budget with those plans. And then third, that if directed by the Chancellor with approval by this board, districts would be required to use some funds, up to 1%, for technical assistance or professional development. So we see those as parts of the ways that we can begin to think about what's the role of the state, and how do we think about how we move forward the goals of the vision for success. So maybe this gets to some of the questions that we've been alluding to, that there's a lot of work that folks here are going to need to do across a variety of areas. So we formed a Chancellor's Office implementation team with a number of audiences. One, obviously, the Board of Governors. I think we have strong interest from the legislature and the governor, but there's also the likely creation of a new oversight committee. So the statute approved by the governor contemplated and talked about future discussions around the creation of a 15-member oversight committee. The specific charge is not entirely clear, and so our office is working with staff to better understand, but I think that's a key, and we think an important role that we're going to have to play moving forward. And so these boxes represent some of the ways in which we're thinking about this work. I think the first two represent the most immediate tasks, that we need to think about how our policies, what changes in policies are necessary to reflect the new formula. But then I think of particular interest to the colleges getting out money under this new formula. So we are working to do that work quickly. We have budget workshops scheduled with chief business officers in mid-August. So I think most of that work is really working towards an August timeframe. But then I think we have a lot of other ways in which we need to think about how to align the work on the funding formula with the vision for success, and situate the funding formula within the work that we're doing on the vision for success, in the same way that we're doing work on guided pathways, AB 705, college promise programs. And so, there's individuals, most of the individuals in the Chancellor's office that are, team here are involved in this work in some way. So, with that, I'm happy to take additional questions.
All right, I have Board Member Haynes. Avalos, go ahead.
So I have two questions. I'll start with the first one, which goes back to the actual budget and what we requested versus what we got relative to professional development, which was 0. And so what I'm wondering is, given the rapid changes relative to sort of how we're going to be doing business in many respects relative to our campuses, do we have enough existing pots of funding that will support the kind of professional development, or is some of that, and I would assume that some of that professional development is kind of grounded within some of the programs and initiatives. I'm thinking AB 705, or the new online has some amount of funding, but what about the other kinds of projects that we're going to be doing, that we need to have funds available for faculty and staff development? Where we're going to get those dollars, or was this, I just want to know, we didn't get anything in that category. To what extent are we hindered, or are colleges hindered as a result of that?
I think we're confident, that this, I would say this is a priority for our office, and I think we're confident that there's a variety of ways in which we can do this work. One is our existing Institutional Effectiveness Partnership Initiative led by Executive Vice Chancellor Tena, and she can talk more about this, but I think we've identified this as a priority for that work moving forward. And so I think this is, that's one place where we're going to be drawing resources. Separately, I think that, I think one of the messages here is that, we talked a bit about, and I'm going to blank on the name, role-alike events.
Yes.
But I think this is one of the ways in which, I think one of the topics for groups of chief business officers and chief student services officers and chief instructional officers, I think this is a big part of that conversation moving forward. And so I think we don't want this to be a separate set of activities, but to really think about how a variety of efforts that colleges are going through elsewhere further the vision for success and also generate additional resources under the funding formula. So I think it's important for us to situate this in the work that colleges are already doing.
Thank you. And my second question goes to now that very detailed outcomes in the funding formula there's funding that's attached to that, and there's point systems that are attached to that. An example that I requested from as a board member at Los Rios had nothing at all to do with the funding formula. It really had to do with, we have 4 campuses, we have graduations, and while each of those campuses talks about how many certificates and how many associate degrees there are, we don't necessarily get a full picture, and I was requesting that we get a full picture across the district. And so the response was, yes, we have that information and we can pull that together for the board. Our graduations are in May and June across the system. Ours is in May, and so they could give us what I'm now thinking are preliminary, but what they did say was we can get the information from the Chancellor's office in September, which is either a plus or minus depending on the calculations of the Chancellor's office. And I'm trying to figure out who will have the best data in benefit for how these points are going to ultimately be counted, because money is now attached to them. So if that can't be answered now, I think it is something to be answered relative to any number of these. But and I understand that we do have some sources, but what is the timeliness of the sources as well? If indeed the Chancellor's office gets this information back to the colleges in September, is that soon enough that they get the points, or is it not soon enough and then there's a question there? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
And I would say, we are using the data that's submitted by districts and colleges. So districts and colleges will always have the data before we do, with those caveats related to the two that we talked about earlier, the kind of the successful transfer and the regional living wage, which districts with, it's sometimes harder for districts to engage in the types of partnerships that we have. But I think for official data, I think colleges probably want some notification from our office. The work and so that time frame of September is probably consistent with the work that, our time frames for when colleges are submitting data. But I think for colleges who are doing planning, a lot of this planning, we are relying on data that they're submitting, and so colleges should be able to run data that gives a sense of what a district's funding is going to look like moving forward.
Board Member Avalos, anyone else in the queue?
Thank you for the presentation. So can you go to the next slide? I'm trying to understand this slide, because when I do the math, it just doesn't equate to me. Shouldn't it be net neutral at the end? So, in 2018-19, shouldn't it be the number at the bottom, well, the total number when it calculates 4,757, and 2 years later, shouldn't it be set that same 4,757?
It's not going to be, because of the way there are embedded assumptions about how those measures are going to change moving forward. So the Department of Finance, in calculating these rates to keep a to end in 2021 with a 60-20-20, made some assumption about how enrollment's going to grow and how the number of low-income students was going to change and how the numbers of degrees and awards and the other outcomes were going to change. So there, in addition to the actual percentages changing, there's also the multipliers that are changing.
But from this, are you saying that in 2 years it's actually be less money in total in aggregate going?
No.
No.
Yes, in total, you should see similar amounts based on kind of also the growth that finance is projecting and the resources available to fund the formula, but you're not able to see the actual counts that are being multiplied against these rates in this formula.
And then the next question I have is, and you didn't cover this, which is the integration of student support services. Can you talk a little bit about that? It seems like the change is to consolidate these programs. Can you tell us more?
So I think a few different changes. One, I think the consolidation is intended to provide flexibility. In addition, Educational Services in this office has provided some guidelines that allow for more flexible expenditures than even those 3 programs. So I think part of this story is about providing additional flexibility for college teams to figure out how do you use these resources to meet the goals and the vision for success, to align with the funding formula, to allow for a better integration across fund sources. I think moving forward, this conversation is also about allocation of resources. So there weren't additional resources provided for that consolidated program. And so what the budget provided was that every district receives what their colleges received in 17-18. I think we are preparing for a conversation about, can we better align how we allocate those resources to also include the same types of measures that are included in the funding formula. Those conversations are very preliminary. We haven't had, there's no kind of defined thought about how to do that, but I think that's part of the direction.
Board Member Avalos, if I can also add to the answer you just received. I think it's important to remember that while all of the general fund resources are reflected in this new funding formula, which are a significant amount of resources, and there are significant metrics assigned to them, how we view the student support services categoricals is the means to support the growth in those metrics. So those, if you think about the population that we're targeting, specifically low income, first generation, although it's not directly implicit in this formula, but this is the population that we are providing additional resources for. We also want to couple that with a flexibility in the student support services program to help colleges tailor their interventions specifically so that they can achieve these outcomes. So we want to provide flexibility so that colleges, depending on what their situation is, can tailor those resources to do the interventions necessary to improve these metrics. So whereas in the past, a lot of these funding pots were disparate, they weren't linked. We're trying to make sure every dollar allocated by the state is linked to the ultimate goal in the vision for success.
Okay, if there aren't any further questions from the Board of Governors, I think we have some speaker cards.
Yes, we have 2, Abdul Albari and John Stanskus.
Please come to the table and turn on the microphone and speak right into it.
I'm here. Thing on? Now it's on. Okay. Jihad Abdul Albari, MA. I'm here as a guest of one of your chief fans, Marlene Hurd. But with lifetime California Community College credential in both career counseling and psychology instruction, I'm fascinated by the progress that you are making and the efforts that you're making right now. The question I want to ask may have just been answered by the Chancellor, but I'm going to check to make sure. What efforts and what money are being put to educate the students on the campuses so that they can more effectively and meaningfully take part in shared governance?
Well, certainly as part of developing shared governance and certainly the student voice on campus, many of these funds, particularly on the student services and support side, are geared toward improving opportunities. And as committees are created, there is a specific role for students on each of these planning committees. And so it's also our role to help promote and support student government. Certainly the Chancellor's Office through Educational Services and Chancellor's Office in general is supporting the statewide student government. But we feel strongly, and I think it's reflected in our goals and in this funding formula, that the students play a critical role in not only helping us understand what they need, but in terms of their advocacy and education about whether it's the guided pathway framework or anything that we're talking about here today, how to improve knowledge of not only going to college, but successfully completing a credential. So we feel that is embedded in this framework, but certainly it is the responsibility of all 114 colleges to develop their student participation at the local level.
The reason I asked the question that way, I was just a student not too long ago at College of Alameda in their effort to continue the Atlas program. The Atlas program is dying for lack of people to teach it for reasons that with a little digging you can figure out. And that is an arena of significant change that needs to be brought to the table. How many of you are familiar with the Atlas program? Never heard of it. Okay. Neither have the members, the president of the Oakland Unified School District's Board of Education, nor the president of their board, the superintendent, nor the president. And containerization, as you know, has transformed intermodal shipping around the world. And one of the biggest containerization ports on the West Coast is in Oakland.
It would be helpful for us to know what it is. I'm assuming it has something to do with containerization, but what is it?
What is it? It is a program conceived in partnership with Oakland's Peralta District and the
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Southern California, I think it's Long Beach.
Probably the Port of Long Beach in LA.
Those two spent a lot of time, energy, and money developing education pathways for that industry. And it's been choked off in College of Alameda because the people who are experienced qualified to teach it don't have BAs and MAs and PhDs in it.
Okay.
Thank you. That's time.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Stans.
Good afternoon, President Estelano, Vice President Epstein.
You don't have to say it every
Chancellor
time.
Oakley, and members of the Board of Governors. I remain John Stanskos. I continue to represent the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. I did have a couple things to say about specifically this part of the Budget Act, which is the funding formula. My understanding from reading the trailer bill is that there is also a legislative committee that I think that the Chancellor mentioned is supposed to be formed to evaluate how this is going. It seems that there were lots of concerns expressed around this group. There's lots of concerns in the field around exactly what those things mean. For example, we just approved 8 unit certificates that would not count for any points because you need 9, and it's written into legislation in that way. Our UC Academic Senate colleagues who've been working very hard on transfer with our Academic Senate are very concerned that many students who transfer to UC do not stop and earn a degree. So would the colleges be disincentivized from moving students to UC, for example, because those students would be worth half the points, in such a formula. And an evaluation of what behaviors are incentivized. I think during the entire conversation, we said any funding formula incentivizes and disincentivizes behavior by an institution. And so what is incentivized or disincentivized, and how do we protect against those things that may seem disincentivized but are actually of great value, like child development, certificate programs that may not help students achieve a living wage, but help students go from 0 to some wage, for example. And how is that protected? Just like we have conversations about how do you protect nursing programs that are never going to be efficient or cost effective, for example, but serve a great need in the community. I hope that we are
30 seconds.
I would hope that we will develop a way to provide system level feedback to the legislature that would involve all constituencies, including the Academic Senate, to sort of raise these issues and perhaps provide some solutions to the legislature as they evaluate how this is going. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up that point. Actually, I think it's an excellent suggestion. And I was going to ask you, Mr. Osmania, who the 15-member committee is, but it sounds like it's a legislative oversight committee.
Yes, and the related legislation has not yet been enacted.
Okay. So I know you all are going to be discussing it, but I do think it's when best dealing with the legislative oversight committee is to have a user group that has evaluated how the incentive structures worked and performed, to be able to offer that up to the oversight committee so that we know the questions to ask, we know the data to be analyzing. We'd be best to have that collaborative process, and I think it would be great to do that with the Academic Senate and CTE folks, and you all know the right players, but to start that right away as we begin the first year would really be great. So I think it's a great suggestion.
Well, if I could add, Madam Chair, while certainly there will be the Legislative Oversight Committee, which of course they will play a specific role depending on how the legislature wants to put this together, but we will also be, as Christian mentioned earlier, pulling together folks to begin looking at this formula from day one.
Yep, that's great.
And happy to report back here, and of course through the consultation council process, if what we find, what we feel needs to be communicated to the legislature.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we've done that item, and I think what we want to do is pull up item 4.4 because it's about next year's budget. Vice Chancellor Mattoon, if you want to come forward. Just finished one budget, let's start the next one.
Before we begin, I just wanted to respond to a few things that I was able to look up while I was sitting over there with my laptop, and Christian was over here, and I'm hoping he'll do the same for me if any of these questions come up on the legislative issues.
Right.
Just quickly, that a living wage is defined by the Insight Center for Community Economic Development. It's an organization that has been specifically named in several other areas of California statute, and they create something called the Self-Sufficiency Standard Tool for California, which is a searchable database available online.
The Self-Sufficiency Standard Tool?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The income limit for Pell Grant. This is not a hard and fast rule, unlike Cal Grant. This is a range of award amounts and therefore a range of income amounts, but generally a good rule of thumb is about $50,000 as the upper limit, although the vast majority of students have family incomes below $40,000.
And that's 50 for a family of 4?
Yes, and the family incomes above that $40,000 are generally because they have family sizes of 4, 5, 6, 7 or larger. And then for the Board of Governors fee waiver, the promise grant, there's 2 ways of receiving that award. One is by making less than 150% of the federal poverty level, which is $36,450 for a family of 4, or through having greater than $1 worth of need pursuant to your calculation under the Pell Grant. So you can end up with a slightly higher income level if you fill out the FAFSA, which is thus the incentive created in the funding formula.
Okay, thank you. That's very, very helpful. Those, you know, it bears note, those are really low income levels for a family of 4.
So as you'll recall, Vice Chancellor Mattoon, I oversee governmental relations, and Vice Chancellor Osmania and I work very closely together in developing the legislative and budget request. We did that in developing this year's request, and we worked very closely together on advocacy, and we'll continue that process moving forward. Unlike last year, we added a new piece to this year's process where we invited system stakeholders, both internal system stakeholders and external system stakeholders, to submit to us ideas for consideration. Those could be either budget items or legislative items. We've received about 34 requests, which will go before our consultation council this Thursday to be discussed. You'll see in the background item here is a calendar of dates associated with our process, and then we'll come before you in August to present the draft proposal for you to take action on. Oh, I'm sorry, in September. We'll come before the board in the September Board of Governors meeting.
Board Member Rawlings. Wait, does that conclude your report?
That's, I think, we were hoping to get any feedback on this time frame, but you know, our goal here is to again present a coordinated request and to hopefully make sure that we are reflecting the voices from not only folks in the Chancellor's office but folks throughout the system.
Great, thank you for that nice, concise report. Board Member Rawlings.
Thank you. I know in the past that we've had a budget and legislative committee, a governance committee here at the Chancellor's office. Has that gone away? I'm wondering. I partly asked because I served the past several years on it prior to joining here on the board.
It exists in our standing orders. It has not been convened, certainly since my tenure on the board. And Member Baum?
He's not talking about the Board of Governors committee, but a different
it's
committee.
The constituent.
Oh, the constituent, okay.
Prior to the consultation council.
And I think one of the efforts, you know, I think one of the pieces of feedback that both Vice Chancellor Mattoon and I have received is trying to engage consultation council in a more substantive way. And so I think what we did in lieu of that process was to schedule this August 16th meeting of the consultation council to try to make that a venue that we can engage in substantively with over the next few months.
Board Member Baum?
Just on the process, I saw in the board book that there's now there's a form to fill out to put through, and so you can properly assess a request. Is that a new system? And kudos to trying to bring some documentation and formality to the process.
Yeah, I think part of it is transparency that we are in the process of trying, we'll be getting those on our website, so we'll be posting the requests that we received. I think part of it is just to standardize the way so that this is the hidden curriculum of how you get something into the budget and legislative request, hopefully becomes easier to navigate. And then eventually, to the extent that things are included in the budget and legislative requests, we'll have to produce budget change proposals to the Department of Finance. I think this is a way to try to make that a little bit easier and more compelling and more serious of an effort.
Yeah, I think it's very good that it's the systematic approach, because we've even done this at the board, decided at the board meeting, oh, let's raise the request from 25 million to 75 million just because there's a personal passion involved. And I don't want to discount personal passion, but it's good to have a more transparent approach to it.
Any other comments? I just want to echo that. I think it's great. You guys did that. And I guess before it was pretty much ad hoc. So 36 is terrific. 36 unique or 36 period? 36 pretty different proposals?
34.
34,
and
sorry.
There's, you know, there's some common themes. One of them is faculty diversity. So I think 3 different organizations submitted some ideas for how we can diversify our faculty. I'm not sure.
I think we'll be prepared at the next meeting. I think we're going to try to go over some of the themes, but and we're hoping that the consultation council conversation helps us group these into areas for us to consider.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And then I'm sorry, Board Member Baum.
I had one last question then too, and channeling some past board members as well. Have there been veterans programs submitted, and are they in process?
I don't think we received. We should wait to answer until we've had a more thorough look at all of the requests that have come in, but I don't remember.
I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, so we have left the state and federal legislative update.
Great.
Now, Vice Chancellor Osmania will be your research analyst.
Exactly.
Okay.
Time to show you some of the pictures from our advocacy. Thank you. Sure. Great. I'm Vice Chancellor Mattoon, Vice Chancellor of Governmental Relations, and I'm going to be providing the state and federal policy and advocacy update. Most of our activities since we last since the board last met, focused on advocacy supporting the state budget. So our team met with all offices of the legislature. We also met individually with over 55 members of the legislature to make sure they understood the various aspects of the budget proposal and how it would specifically affect their districts. I wanted to point out here something that we worked with the communications and the division and the foundation to create, which is this postcard that we created for all members of the legislature to show explicitly what the change in the funding formula would result in for each of their districts. I hesitated to use this slide because of how small the type is, but I did think it was really important to show the broad list of supporters for the funding formula. You can see on here community college trustees, members of our own board, college districts, and a wide array of organizational partners. And it was really through the efforts of all of these organizations that we were successful in our budget advocacy around the funding formula. Many of these organizations got involved not just in the advocacy towards the end of the process, but also in being engaged in the equity convenings that we organized in coordination with the Campaign for College Opportunity that resulted in some of the recommendations that you saw included in the May revision as well as in the final budget that was adopted by the legislature. Similarly, on the online college, there was a wide array of support for the online college. This list shows the colleges and districts as well as the organizational partners that took a support position. Chancellor Oakley already talked about one of our key supporters, SEIU California and UHW, who came out really early and saw the need for this for their members and did a great job of advocating to members of the legislature about the role that the online college can play. So just a quick update. If you look in your materials, you'll see here the bills organized by supported bills and bills proposed for support, as well as our bills that are sponsored by the Board of Governors. I wanted to highlight specifically 3 bills that the board had taken action to support that were ultimately included in the budget proposal. The first one, AB 2891 by Assemblymember Holden, allowed for dual enrollment partnerships to be expanded to include charter schools. So that language was incorporated into the Budget Act trailer bill. SB 940 by Senator Bell. This bill was actually brought to our attention by Board Member Perry. The bill created increased Cal Grant support for foster youth in our system. That was incorporated into the Budget Act. And then SB 1354 by Senator Galgiani created the California Apprenticeship Initiative in statute. It currently only existed in budget language itself, so it was adopted into the Budget Act and now exists in statute. On the second column here, bills sponsored by the Chancellor's office, just a quick update that we continue to push for AB 1935, which would allow for apportionment to be claimed for supervised tutoring associated with students in transfer level and degree applicable courses. This bill is now in the Senate Appropriations Committee, where we will continue to argue that any additional costs that will be greatly offset by the benefits to students passing their courses, having higher GPAs, and being more likely to complete their educational goals. On AB 2666, this was a bill that the board voted to support in our budget from last year that sought to create a workaround data sharing agreement so that we could gain wage outcomes for K-12 students in adult education that don't ultimately touch our system. The workaround would have been through the Department of Motor Vehicles in order to obtain the Social Security number. Ultimately, the bill was held in the Assembly Appropriations Committee for 2 reasons. 1, concerns from the DMV that there might be costs, but 2, and maybe more importantly, general concerns that partnership with the DMV could create a way to identify undocumented people in the state of California. And there were worries about whether or not we'd have appropriate protections for DMV to ensure that those records could be kept away from potential risk under changes in the federal law. And then finally on that list is our cleanup bill, which does a few things that allow our system to operate more easily, allowing foster youth liaisons to sign off on student needs, changing reporting dates, and a couple of other items in there. That one's also moving forward and is now moving forward to the Senate floor. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight on page 96 of the background item are the bills that we're proposing to take a Chancellor's Office support position. These bills have been reviewed by my team, discussed at Consultation Council, and are now moving forward to the board for support. If there are any items on here you'd specifically like me to discuss or highlight, I'm happy to.
Just procedurally, so are we taking a position at this time?
You don't have to take action on this. The Chancellor has the authority to take positions on your behalf consistent with prior legislation, which these all are. It's really an opportunity for you to weigh in before we send in a formal support position.
Got it. Yes.
So
Board Member Haynes.
Thank you. I had AB 266 highlighted, recognizing that usually when a bill is held in the originating house that it's sort of dead. And I actually think that this issue is really, really important. So thank you for explaining what the issue really was. But maybe I didn't hear, is there a way to make certain that our undocumented population's confidentiality is held, but still get to being able to get this information? Are there any creative ways of doing that? Is there another way of going through another doorway to get this information? Because it is something that we need as we partner with our K-12 partners in our local districts, as well as higher ed, the UCs and the CSUs. Are we going to reconstitute, is somebody going to reconstitute this in a different way that we can get this information?
A couple of things on that. I would say, one, this concern came out very late in the process, and so we're still wanting to just make sure we've verified that this will be protected information, that there would be no way for this to be used to harm our undocumented population. I feel comfortable that the bill would not allow that, but I think we just need to do some more work to make sure that's the case. And I'm not familiar with the requests that have gone into DMV already around this issue, so I just need to understand more of the concerns on their side. Second, I would say that this issue of a longitudinal data system is something that there's a wide amount of support for. It's something we expect the next administration will probably want to take on. And actually, in August, there will be a legislative oversight hearing on this very subject, inviting all the segments to come in and talk about how we would move forward in creating a more comprehensive longitudinal data system so that we can avoid these individual MOU workarounds to that need.
Any other questions? Yes, Board Member Walker.
So AB 1037, undocumented student financial aid. Towards the bottom, it says the person must perform 300 hours of community service or volunteer work in an academic year. Why is that? And in the case the person couldn't perform 300 hours throughout that year, would they lose financial aid?
No, this bill is about creating a a financial aid work benefit similar to the federal work study program that currently exists for residents of this state. So the idea is that that would be the maximum amount of hours that an undocumented student could work in order to receive this additional grant amount. Our undocumented population already has access to our existing financial aid programs. The effort here was to try and replicate a federal program that population doesn't have access to because of their status.
Okay, and last part. So I'm not too familiar with the work study programs. So would they be getting paid simultaneously, or would it just be voluntary?
It's an internship. As somebody who used to get federal work study money, it's a pretty important benefit. So you'll get your financial aid package, and then you'll also get a package of, you can do work study for a certain wage. So you might get a job in the library or tutoring or something like that. So it's an additional financial aid.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Did I get that right, Laura? Okay. Yeah, Board Member Fawn.
Yes, can I ask on AB 2477, Student Support Services, the Dream Resources Liaison? As I'm reading that, I'm not too clear, and I see quite a bit of number of assembly members opposing that, if I read it correctly, 55 to 17. Can you elaborate or explain what that does, please?
So the bill requires that the public higher education segments create DREAM resource liaisons on their campuses, essentially to make sure that their dreamer population understand other benefits that might be available, such as AB 540 benefits, our Dreamer financial aid program. In this year's budget, there's additional money provided for legal services for our undocumented population. And so actually, when we were at Santa Ana, we heard from their college president last year about the importance of the Dreamer Resource Center on their campus and how it's worked to really bring this population into the campus community and provide support for them. The vote here, I think, is a partisan vote. I could look it up, or we could talk about it afterwards. And I think the concern that we've heard from within the system is just about resources. And so the position we're proposing to take is in support of the work with a goal of ensuring that the resources are made available to the colleges to provide these services for students.
That's exactly my concern, is that I'm just afraid that we're imposing upon the colleges, requiring them to have these liaisons, pay for these liaisons. I don't know how many, but that would be an additional cost to this individual colleges, that if there's not funding for it, it would be difficult to carry out.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Okay, if there's no objections or concerns about the support proposal, one that was raised.
Thank you. Just to close that item out, the legislature is currently in their summer recess. They'll be back that first week of August, and then they'll have just under a month to close out all of their legislative business in the 17-18 budget year. So finally, I just wanted to talk briefly about some of the advocacy that's taken place on the federal level. Last year in June, I participated with the Faculty Association and the Community College League in a delegation to DC to talk about our priorities around federal financial aid and reauthorization of the Higher Education Act. I wasn't able to go this year, but we did, because we now have a federal advocate on working for us, Connie Myers. She was able to attend these meetings, so I thought I'd just share a couple of pictures that came across Twitter. And the only other thing I would say about this is that we had heard in June that the PROSPER Act, which is the House Republicans' effort to reauthorize the Higher Education Act, would probably be coming forward for a floor vote. We quickly organized opposition consistent with the position that our board had taken when we were out there in February. We targeted a number of districts. You'll see them listed here. I'm pleased to report all of them responded quickly and sent in letters of opposition to their members of Congress. Chancellor Oakley also signed on to a letter with President Napolitano and Chancellor White that went out just a few weeks ago, and we'll continue to express our concerns about PROSPER. On the Senate side, it's looking like there'll be a proposal to reauthorize the workforce programs within HEA, possibly moving forward, and we commented on that proposal just this morning. We sent those comments over. Essentially, we've expressed support for additional financial aid resources for working adults and support for increased funding to support college partnerships with employers, but also a recognition that that additional funding should come with accountability provisions that ensure that these are high quality workforce programs. Obviously, we've seen as a nation abuse in some of these career education sectors, and so it's just important that we pair this high level of support with additional accountability. So with that, that concludes my presentation.
Board Member Avalos.
Yes. Thank you very much. One of the questions I have is SB 1406, which is the Community College Baccalaureate Degree Pilot Program. Is there any concern that that's not going to go through in terms of extending the timeline?
We have a support position on that bill, and we have indicated that we believe that this extension can happen with no additional cost to either the colleges or to our office. We're working with the Assembly Appropriations Committee, where a similar bill was held last year, to articulate why we think this is a no-cost proposal. If we're successful, I expect the bill to go forward. And we've been working with the colleges that support this to also inform the committee members of appropriations that this can be done without additional cost to the state.
I mean, from my perspective, it seems like it was a big initiative that we had probably 4 years ago. And, you know, I just don't want it to die on the vine, if you will, because I think that it's done, you know, some great work, and we're seeing some progress, and we're actually seeing some completions. And so whatever we can do to move this, we should try to do that.
I completely agree. In fact, just last week, I had the opportunity to meet Board Member Grande, and we talked about the how we can increase advocacy in the Capitol more generally around the baccalaureate program, and so that's something I'll be working with the colleges on moving forward. We want to make sure that the legislature understands the importance of these programs to our communities.
Vice President Epstein.
Yeah, I just had a question about the Accreditation Council, ACICS. Can you just talk a little bit about what's happening there and what the significance is?
So under the Obama administration, the Department of Education found that ACICS had not done a thorough job in ensuring educational quality for the institutions that it accredits, and they moved to revoke recognition for that accreditor. Under the new administration, the department has determined that the accreditor should be moved back into compliance and allowed to continue to accredit colleges. There's pending litigation around this issue. A number of organizations have requested information showing the internal staff reports around the finding, and so we're really in a wait-and-see process. Do I have a point of Sure. Chancellor Oakley?
I'd be happy to let Vice Chancellor Mattoon articulate our point of view.
We have argued that accrediting agencies have an important role to play in ensuring quality of educational institutions. They're designed to be peer review processes that ensure better educational outcomes for students, and obviously it's important to us in serving our students to ensure that accreditors are doing their jobs. We talk a lot about that three-legged stool of oversight: state governments, the federal government, and accreditors, and if any one of those entities aren't doing their job, we really have a failed structure of oversight. We haven't commented specifically on that accreditor, but we've consistently talked about the role of each of these entities and the importance of their work.
If this didn't exist, or the opponents of it shut it down, what are the options? What would be the alternative?
Most of the institutions that were previously accredited by that accreditor have moved over to be recognized by a different accrediting agency. So the question is, for those that are left, there is a concern that if those institutions are forced to close, what would happen to their students?
And this revolved around the for-profit colleges, right? Is it
Yes.
They were accrediting bad for-profit colleges, is that correct?
Yes, they had a couple of the Corinthian institutions, and I believe they had ITT as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you for your report. Okay. Public forum. But first, before we get to the public forum, it's that time of the day, late in the day, when we do our board member reports. It's early, but don't feel compelled to say a lot. Just anything you feel that is important to share with the board, highlighting your various activities, sundry activities would be terrific. I actually know, because I've been approving a lot of people's travel requests and meeting requests, you have all been quite busy. So let's just get a report. Let's start this way. Alex, you wanna go for it?
So since the last time we met, I had a pretty interesting experience. I attended Santa Rosa's Junior College's graduation because I have a couple of friends who attended the college. And later that evening, I had the opportunity to sit down with some undocumented students and students from various walks of life. And hearing some of the stories that those students told me were inspiring and tear-jerking simultaneously. I met with one student, and she told me how her father was deported under the Trump administration, and it kind of made me sit back and think about the current times that we are in. And I just wanted to say this vocally, that what's going on in America right now seems like as though we were going backwards. Over in Tom and I's neck of the woods, originally there was a proposed camp to harbor immigrant children over at the Concord Naval Base, and now it's been proposed to go to Pleasant Hill, which is literally just the next town over. So I just wanted to vocally say that I'm against that because I have too many constituents that have feared their concerns. And in addition to that, I also had the opportunity to sit down with some students who were affected by the fires that have been plaguing the states, and to see the students persevere and overcome so much is really inspiring. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Board Member Phan.
Multiple events, but I'll probably just name one. Last week on Monday, I had the opportunity to join a few distinct leaders in the higher educational arena in the state of California to actually discuss the master plan of higher education in our state. I think our chancellor was there, as well as my buddy to my left. And I want to appreciate the thanks to the governor's staff for inviting me as a faculty voice on that in that discussion. I think it's time for us to, well, past due, I think, to actually take a very close look at the master plan for higher education that was developed in the 1960s. And whatever evolves from the discussion last week, and hopefully more discussions to come, we should give a serious look at revising or updating our master plan so that it reflects the current and the future of the education in our state. So those are my comments.
Board Member Avalos.
So I just want to comment on Foundation for California Community Colleges. So we actually had a retreat last month where all new members came together, and we talked about how there's such energy in the state of California around community colleges. Especially from the philanthropic community. And so it seems like, the ramp rate in terms of how much investment is going into the Community College Foundation is incredible in terms of the growth. So a lot has to do with just an innovative type of work that we are dealing with and that funders really like to get behind. Also, I just want to call out, this was dropped off on your chair, which is a summary of some of the activities that the Community College Foundation has been involved in recently, what they've supported. Like I mentioned, the 115th statewide online college, they're doing a lot of work around that. There was a cool convening that took place with the James Irvine Foundation that brought together just different thought leaders around philanthropy and how they think about online education. So I just want to put a plug in there for you guys.
Thank you. Board Member Baum.
No report. Just want to extend my personal welcome to our new board member. It's a welcome addition to have another member of our board, and thanks to the Chancellor and the President for arranging the visit by the Governor so that we can engage in active dialogue about the future of our system with him.
Thank you. Vice President Epstein.
The only thing I wanted to report is that I attended the DVC graduation and appreciated the courtesy. It was very inspiring and fun, and it was very worthwhile. I recommend others do it if they haven't been to one.
Board Member Perry.
I also want to thank you for being the governor here. I learned so many new things. And I think it's a great harbinger for all the new learning that's going to take place at the 115th college. I wanted to point out there's an organization I work with in LA called United Friends of the Children that works to provide supportive housing for youth who've aged out of care and improve educational outcomes. And for the first time, they are now looking for foster youth in community college to apply to their scholars program.
Oh, that's great.
Previously always been focused on 4 years. So I think it speaks to where we are today with the community colleges, and some credit accrues to the Chancellor's office and all the work that's been done.
Board Member Haynes.
Thank you. And I'm going to use some of the other time that you guys passed over. I'm just going to let you. first off, I just want to share just the importance of the change being made around student self-referral to tutoring. It's once again being able to look at ourselves critically and see where we have created some barriers for students to self-identify. I think it's a move in absolutely the right direction. I also, I serve along with Tom on the AB 705 implementation team. As many of us know, that implementation instrument as a memo went out to the field, and I just want to commend how well and how thoughtful this particular document is. And I also want to thank John Stankus for your signature to the. It is so much more powerful to have you and the leadership. And I really appreciated the words that were spoken, that we're all there on behalf of our students. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and make what we're trying to do work. I got some feedback from the field asking, one, did they receive it, and two, did they read it, and did they have any observations, and it was all very well received in terms of really thinking through what the questions were and trying to answer, and really, I think, answering the questions very well. So thank you for that. And there are just two more items, and it has to do with the funding formula. As I've just said, the faculty is critical to the success of anything that we do, and having that voice and everyone's sort of sleeves rolled up is critical. But also the role of trustees, and I am, I'll just say, a bit concerned that we need to do a better job, not just the Board of Governors, but all of the groups that come together to provide trustees information. Mm-hmm. I don't know how well we're doing. It's not that we're not putting a lot of information out. I absolutely believe we are, but it may not be enough to get really deep down. We are going through transformational change, and we're doing it more quickly than the system is used to doing it. And so if we do not reach that body of decision makers in a way they have the information at their hands, then we've left out a key voice. And so I just want to bring that to our attention. And then finally, as I listened to some of the discussions around the funding formula and around the support that our students need to be successful, sorry, I'm getting ready to lose my voice. Much of the focus has been on full-time students. That's critically important, and it's also been around how do we get students to become full-time students. But there is a group of students, and right now that number is about 40% of our students are part-time. And given how they enter our systems, we can chip away at that 40 and maybe make it 30, but we're not going to ever have 100%. Our system shouldn't have 100% full-time, but this is really for students to get to them where they need it, when they recognize that that they're coming back to get these skills. And so as we develop support systems, I don't want there to be a competition between services rendered to full-time students as opposed to rationing of services to part-time students. And so I throw that out because not that would be an intentional thing, but I think we do have to make certain that as we are wrapping around services to our students, we want them all to be successful. We really want to take away the barriers, but we also want to make certain that they're getting their services on time and in the time that they need it as well. With that, I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for allowing me the time to say that.
Thank you. Board Member Rawlings.
Thank you. Since the last meeting, I had the pleasure of going to the Curriculum Institute from the Academic Senate, and I'd like to thank John and his team for putting on a great event. Coming from the classified side of the shop, especially in the non-instruction office side of the shop. It was very informative for me. I mean, I see the students typically after they receive the instruction in the classroom, and now they're out in the lab space and they need the academic support. And so I never really spend a lot of time thinking about what goes into making the curriculum that leads to the students coming to me. And so I learned all about the challenges that a lot of our faculty have. But the thing I think was really a key takeaway for me this past week was the amount of energy that they have and the focus they have at implementing some of the initiatives that we're moving forward on. I had expected maybe a little bit of hesitation or maybe a little reluctance or opposition. I didn't see really any of that. It was all energy, looking forward, moving forward, helping our students move forward, and helping them achieve what their goals are. And that was really empowering, really inspirational to see the amount of focus and really a great batch of innovation going on. I also learned where some of the things that we have going on here can be holding them back a little bit, and where we could really unlock some potential. And so I've got some notes that I've taken from those workshops, and I'm going to get those out to the Chancellor or the Vice Chancellors as appropriate, and make sure people know that, hey, this thing really is a bigger problem than we might think it is. So I look forward to doing that.
Board Member Anderson. Great. Board Member Grande.
I'll go ahead and take his time and your time and the time of the two that are missing there and the one here. I'll start by thanking everyone, especially President Estolano, Vice President Epstein, Chancellor Oakley, and all of the members of the Board of Governors for making me feel so welcome, especially Bill Rollins, who reached out to me at the Curriculum Institute and came up to introduce himself and give me some lay of the land. So I was prepared for today, knowing that I would be tasked with the Pledge of Allegiance and providing a report. So if that was a hidden secret, it was divulged previously so that I could look as though I'm prepared for today. But I won't say anything more about the Curriculum Institute other than it's a phenomenal event that I was able to attend once again. But I do want to comment on the baccalaureate degree pilot program colleges that came together last week. We hosted our annual meeting where the pilot programs come together, and I want to give a huge thank you to Alice Perez and Laura Mattoon and Dean Jackie Escajeda and her staff, especially, and Jerry Griffin, for bringing us all together to facilitate the conversations that make us feel as though we're not alone as we're steering this ship. So there's 15 of us across the state, and you kind of feel like you're doing your own work until all 15 of you are together, and then it is so synergistic in the room. We were able to share best practices, celebrate our successes, troubleshoot potential issues that were coming down the pike. But just one thing I wanted to highlight that you may or may not be aware of, when we talk about articulation and collaboration, we normally talk about the community college to the UC or the CSUs, but you may not be aware that the 15 pilot schools are also sharing their upper division general education across their students. So when my students don't have an upper division general education class to take at Cypress, West Los Angeles College reached out to them and said, come take our general education class. So we're doing an awful lot of collaboration within the 15, which makes it seem as though we're very siloed because we're working together, but we are setting the foundation for what will be an awesome expansion should 1406 go through and more colleges are allowed to participate in the future. We are trendsetters, but we're innovating, and I am so excited to be a member of the Board of Governors at this transformational time. A question that you asked earlier today, President Estolano, is what do I see as my position here and my interest on the Board of Governors? I'm interested in the community college baccalaureate degree more than anything. Credit for prior learning is my passion. The online college is an incredible opportunity, #115. And then I really am interested in building more pathways within the system and outside of the system as well. So thank you all for allowing me to feel welcome. And I'm sorry if I took more than 3 minutes. You could have cut me off.
Thank you. That was great. Okay, now public forum. Do we have any members of the public who wish to address the Board of Governors on any item not agendized here today?
We do. We have 3, and we appreciate their persistence here and still being here. Marlene Hurd, John Stanskis, and Larry Galizio.
Just needs to be green.
That on now?
There you
great.
go.
Okay. Oh boy. All right. So as he stated, my name is Marlene Hurd. I'm a student at Merritt College, also president for the Merritt College Tobacconist Club. I also serve on the campuses Organized and United for Good Health, GOF. In March, I came and was one of 3 who spoke to you about my personal encounter of secondhand smoke on a community college. Little did I know, after also speaking with member Griffin about my experience, you guys would pass a resolution to help us with that. At your May meeting, you voted to pass that resolution, and I'm here to thank you. And the reason why I'm here to thank you is because in the resolution, you gave an estimate that 41,000 of these tobacco-related deaths are the result of secondhand smoke. And that's what I encountered. And I've taken up this work. It's a personal passion of mine now, and I want many people to know about its dangers. I've also handed out this handout, Tobacco-Free Campuses, Why Eliminate It. I know you probably already know this, but I wanted you to have a copy of that. And then I also, in furthering my work in the tobacco message, I did some work around the documentary Addiction Incorporated. I think I've given you guys one of these. I don't know, have you heard about this? Have you heard about the documentary? I encourage you to go on YouTube and look at it. The gentleman who did the research revealed the tobacco industry's effort to addict people. And to me, that was kind of like shocking, but it's the truth. And there's one section in the documentary, I want to quickly read it to you. One section in the documentary, it's about an hour 07.10. It states in the documentary, a person has stated, in the hands of the right government is the power to do whatever is necessary to reduce and maximize the extent possible the number of people who die from using tobacco.
20
now,
seconds.
I just want to say that as a board of governors, you took your power in the hands and you voted for the resolution. And I know we're looking forward to working with the community college campuses in reducing that. But I just want to thank you. That means a lot to me that I spoke up. I was afraid to do that. I'm not afraid of tobacco anymore because I know what it does in killing people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurd. Thank you also for highlighting the toxicity in water. That's great, really important. Okay. Konstantinos? And Larry Galucio, you guys want to come up? It takes valuable time away from your speaking.
I was going to tell you, I think I have more than 3 minutes. Are you going to cut me off after 3 minutes?
I might, I don't know, it depends. You probably have 3 minutes banked with your introduction. Go ahead.
Depends on what
It depends what you say.
Well, the first thing I have to tell you is that I posted a picture of my of the governor being here on Facebook, and my mother would like to know if you could produce Barbra Streisand next. Because she thinks that's amazing. I'm not sure what that has to do with me. Thanks, Mom. The Academic Senate has been busy over the summer. I am sitting here for the first time as the president to address you. We had our first meeting, my first day as president, and highlighted 4 areas that particularly intersect the work of the Chancellor's Office and the Academic Senate as academic and professional matters that we wish to make progress on significantly this year. And they include guided pathways, the implementation of AB 705, which I think we've done a little bit of that, thanks. The strong workforce program initiatives around faculty minimum qualifications and the diversification of the faculty. And so you'll hear me talk about those for the rest of the year as sort of major agenda items for the Academic Senate to be considering and evaluating how we're progressing on. I wanted to tell you we had our Faculty Leadership Institute. We had 100 new Senate leaders from around the state convene also in June. That was a great conference. I wanted to thank Christian Osminia and Jake Knapp for coming and providing their expertise around budget development and EEO training, and that was really appreciated. I think you've heard enough about the Curriculum Institute. It was our largest yet. We had about 650 people there.
Wow.
We had many curriculum chairs, articulation officers, curricular support staff, and administrators. And I particularly wanted to thank the Chancellor's Office staff, especially Laura Hope and Alice Perez, for sending a robust team to help professionally develop the faculty, staff, and administration in the system. And I really appreciate that dedication for, Wednesday through Saturday last week. We look forward to the implementation of the Open
30 seconds.
Resources Initiative, and we're appreciative that that showed up in the budget for that the governor signed, in addition to ongoing CID funding to support the infrastructure of the system. I also appreciated the governor's remarks about the value of faculty and decision making at the local level, and the Senate's perspective is that the system level needs to provide a framework or structure that's broad enough to permit local implementation and innovation, most responsive to local communities for all students. I think that's what we try to do, and that's our role, to advise you, to advise the Chancellor's Office from the faculty perspective about how to do that. I think you've seen some proof of how we've done that in the past. I know Executive Vice Chancellor Hope probably wanted to just rip my eyes out, working on a 10-page memo about AB 705, but the output was great and did exactly what we needed to do, and I really appreciate her patience with me and meeting with me several times in order to be able to go hand in hand to the field and say, this is how we do it. And this is our role, and we'll get through there together. So I look forward to continuing to work with you and the Chancellor's Office. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Larry.
President Estolano, Vice President Epstein, Chancellor Oakley, members. And I can confirm that Laura Hope did indeed wish to, no. No, we're just kidding. So I tweeted out a photo commodification, I guess, of Governor Brown with Vice President Epstein's placard in front, and got a lot of responses. So that was interesting. No, just here. Okay,
my son's intern saw it somehow and already sent it to me by text. So
yeah,
thank you.
There you go. So who knows where that's going to go somehow? But just two items. One, I wanted to concur with what Member Haynes said about, this is going to be a focus of the league this year, is really just enhancing our communication with our members, which at one level sounds kind of silly, but at another, I think all of you know, we're just bombarded with a fusillade of information and messages, and we have to do a better job because as any college president knows, as any leader knows, sometimes rumors come back to you about things that you ostensibly said or are doing, and you don't know where it came from. And so this, working with your office, this is one of our primary goals, is being more effective, getting out there and communicating, making sure that the CEOs and our trustees are better informed, more up to date. And so looking forward to working on that. And then lastly, Member Avalos, I really appreciate that you brought up the baccalaureate degree, and it's fortuitous, and really excited in your
phenomenal energy. Look forward to working with you, Member Grande, and congratulations on your position. And looking at the master plan, there's so much work to do with our current mission, and that's understood, and that's clear. But this is not an either or, this is an and we feel so strongly that if you look at equity and availability and access for whether it's rural students or students in more urban areas, cost, for so many reasons, the community college baccalaureate is something that we feel really strongly about advocating for on behalf of the districts. So look forward to doing that. And I received from there's a new leader there's a nationwide community college baccalaureate degree association. They have a new president, and she said to me, having 25% of all community college students in the country is a massive responsibility, speaking about California. Can you imagine the difference that it would make in this country if we have convenient, accessible, affordable pathways to baccalaureate degrees? So look forward to working with all of you, and again, congratulations.
Thank you, Larry. Okay. I think that no further speaker cards. So with that, that concludes this meeting of the Board of Governors for today. We will be adjourning, and we'll be back in closed session at noon tomorrow. I get that right? For a couple of 2 or 3 matters. And with that, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next month for a special meeting of the 115th College Board of Trustees. Great.
And at dinner.
Right, dinner.
5:30.
Dinner.